cool thing I wanted to talk about with you guys. So it's how to turn squash into eggs. And a lot of people don't know about this trick, but you can actually make eggs out of squash. And here's how you do it. So yesterday we went around to our neighbors because we had some extra squash. We have tons of squash, and we're picking off more every day. And so we wanted to give our neighbors some. So we went up and left some squash. Nobody was home yesterday. I don't know what it is in this neighborhood that in the middle of a Saturday they're just all gone. Maybe they have lives and we don't. But so we went up there, and then today, look what happened. A neighbor dropped by and gave us 2 dozen farm fresh brown eggs. Look at that. So that is how you turn a few squash into eggs. So John at Will It Grow had some issues with his peaches, and I wanted to kind of show some of the ones that we had here to show you that there's similar stuff that comes out of ours. So this is I'm pretty sure the pectin that actually comes out of the fruit. And the reason why I'm also pretty sure that this is the case is because you'll see a lot more of it after it rains. And the reason, of course, is because the rain, it starts pumping water into the fruit. So it'll actually dry up a little bit. These are some that you probably would have seen it on there before. And you'll see it kind of dries up a little bit. Sorry, it's not focusing very well. But basically any kind of damage to the outside of the fruit, usually that is done by some insects. Now, they're not always necessarily laying eggs, but they could just be poking holes in your fruit, and it seems like what happens is it damages the outside, and then when the fruit pumps water in, because this is going to become a juicy peach, or would have been a juicy peach maybe, the pressure obviously leaks out, and there's a lot of sugary pectin. Now, I'm not going to eat this to tell you that that's what it is, but I'd be willing to bet that it is. But I did this one had a couple of holes in it, and so I decided to kind of chop in and see if I could see any damage on the other side, and it looked like some of these were only really skin deep. So even though they looked bad on the outside, looked like something bored in, it actually just looks like something may have bored in to eat, or maybe drink some of the nectar out of the fruit, and looks like something kind of cut the outside but didn't actually lay any eggs. Now, I haven't cut this one open yet, so any of those holes there could be. But you're going to see tiny holes like that, and that's where either they've bored in and laid eggs, or maybe something just tried to drink from it and punched a hole in it. And you don't know which one's which. Either way, it's not necessarily good, but I think they can recover as long as they don't have worms in them, and they'll still grow. This is our first year with peaches too. I've had to do a ton of research because, again, I have seen a lot of pests. But as I dug down deeper inside of this, it looked like there was some damage that went down in a little bit further in this one. But I don't see any eggs or any sign of any existing life in there. So if it was, it's gone. And I think I did read somewhere that this action here also is a good thing relatively for the plant, because it's actually a way for it to push things out that are in as well. So it's kind of like a pus, even though it's really not a pus. It can, if there's something in there, it can actually eject it out kind of naturally. So that may be true, may not be true. I really don't know, but I needed to thin some of these out anyway. They're still too close, but I figured I'd sacrifice a couple of them and cut them open and see if we could find any worms. And so far, or any eggs or anything, unless they are the exact same color, which they may be, as the peach flesh, I'm not really finding anything. So maybe it's not as big of a deal as it seems to be. I think it doesn't really matter because once it's done, there's not much you can do about it. But so here's one that looked pretty bad from the outside, but when I look underneath, it's only really surface deep. It's really not very deep at all. And I don't think there's anything that's actually living inside of that. I think it's just some bug damage. But as you can see, we've gotten several of them that do have some form of damage on them, and this one's had this damage since the beginning, or since very early on. All of these pretty much had. They came on within about the first week of seeing fruit. You saw holes. Now, I think the lesson learned is to make sure you spray prior to flowering, and as soon as flowering is over, you spray again as well, and then you keep that cycle up. I don't know what we're going to get as far as peaches this year. We're observing, and this is part of my observation, but we are seeing the same kind of stuff as John's seeing on ours, and we have for a while. But it does kind of dry up, and they may or may not make it. I don't know. Not every one of them has that, but a lot of them do. But the truth is, with peaches anyway, you're supposed to pick off and basically only leave one peach every 6 inches or so. So I guess the real good rule of thumb is if they have one, just pick it off and only leave the ones on there that don't have any damage. Apparently, once they get older and more mature, the skin gets a little bit thicker, and it's you have to spray less, and you have less risk of pest damage because they can't get through the skin as easily. So I don't know, but this is a learning year for us too, so hopefully this helps a little bit, and maybe not too much fear, and just seeing that little bit of pectin doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it's infested with some kind of worm, although you probably have some. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Thing that I noticed with peaches as well, so if you're worried about, you know, picking off peaches, and it has a little bit of damage on it, they actually prune themselves quite a bit. So if they're going to go ahead and do it anyway, you might as well do it early. That's something I learned this year. So if you think all of those peaches are going to turn into peaches if you leave them on there, it's not true, because they're going to drop most of them anyway. You know, they're all over the ground over here, but they kind of thin themselves out some. But basically the rule of thumb for having good peaches is to have one every 6 inches on a branch. See, some of them just dry up. And but if you're going to have peaches and you want them to put all their energy into to make big peaches, if you prune them off, then they can put all of that energy into those peaches and not just putting them into ones they're going to let dry out and fall to the ground anyway. So definitely some damage on some of these, but I'm keeping them anyway. Unless they look really nasty. That one looks pretty nasty. I think I'll pull that one off. There's one right behind it anyway. But yeah, as you can see, there's definitely some dried up pectin on here and some oozing out there. It actually hardens up too when it dries, and it's like a crystal, because it's mostly sugar. And so even that little teeny tiny hole there, it comes out. I do not believe there's, some people said it might be aphid, you know, the aphid deposits or whatever. I don't think that's it. Could be. I'm not 100% sure, but there's definitely some nasty stuff. But I'll just pull these things off. But they do get hard too. It's interesting. Like the smaller ones, so it's almost like a little scab for it, but it's really just the pectin in there, which, you know, the scab may protect it, just like a scab protects an injury on you. The pectin may come out to protect an injury on the fruit. Of course, as it gets larger, that might become an issue. It may heal. I don't know. It's interesting though. One thing I am doing that you probably shouldn't do is throwing it close. This guy's got something on. see, it's got some damage. So, not a horrible idea to do is if you get something like this and you're not sure it's got insect damage, if you're going to throw it away, don't throw it at the base of the tree where it can just grow out there and come back up to the tree. Just throw it away. I'm not going to throw it with my left hand because I'm not left-handed, and it won't go very far, and that'll be embarrassing. But yeah, look at this guy. He's got some nasty damage on him too. Alright, I will throw it with my left hand. But some of these guys look really good. I mean, they don't have too much damage, and so they should grow into peaches, hopefully. It's a little sculpture, a little pecten sculpture. It looks like somebody sitting in a chair. What does that look like to you guys? Looks good.